So here's my top 11 favorite AEW women's wrestlers. First, before we start, I'd like to establish that this list will be following a different path, as the AEW women's division is weaker than other rosters and divisions in which we will be covering. So this will be following all-time rules, making former talents eligible, as well as for a few entries here, an official signing, if the talent appears or has appeared regularly between the Darks and Dynamites, will not be required, and this will apply across lists in which this rule is applicable. Number 11, Hikaru Shida. While not someone who exactly fits into one of my favorites, Shida also isn't someone that I dislike by any means, and is truly impressive in ring. What she did for the women's division throughout the pandemic as the longest reigning champion cannot be ignored. She deserved all the celebration and more that she had received as champion before losing to Britt Baker at Double or Nothing. Number 10, legit Layla Hirsch. Layla Hirsch is on here because while she's not the tallest out there, she can also kick my ass. So for that, I'm not risking leaving her off. No, but while that's all true, let's get back on a serious note, as I don't know why, but I just tend to enjoy matches in which Layla Hirsch is competing, and for obvious reasons, that is more than enough of a reason to find her on this list. Number 9, Chris Statlander, the Galaxy's greatest alien. Come on, who doesn't like Chris Statlander, assuming you're not Jim Cornette, and have a sense of what should be allowed in today's wrestling. Chris Statlander, even pre-AEW, has been great, and continues to build on that with her great stuff on BTE with Orange Cassidy, and now joining him, Trent, and Chucky T in The Best Friends. Number 8, Maki Ito. Someone who, while I knew of before making an appearance for AEW, I did not have the privilege to see many, if any, of her matches. I would soon gain an appreciation for the cutest in the world Maki Ito through her work in the women's tournament and the following matches she would compete in before returning to Japan, where I now choose to keep an eye on her work. Number 7, Julia Hart. The Bloomington, Minnesota product, Julia Hart, has quickly risen as one of my favorite women in AEW, and in my eyes, given the Varsity Blondes a jolted life. Of course, as a product of Minnesota, Hart would start her career right here, graduating from the academy before moving on to the Nightmare Factory and earning her chance in AEW. Number 6, Penelope Ford. The super bad girl, while not the most outstanding in-ring worker, she just has an it factor that I don't feel from many in any company, let alone AEW. Not saying she's a future world champion, but she also gives a feeling of somebody who doesn't need to be at the top of a division, but can still generate some buzz amongst fans, which is always a positive if it's for the right reasons. Number 5, Bea Priestley. One of the few people on this list whose work I was given the opportunity to see much of before her time in AEW, namely during her time with WCPW, later known as Defiant. Bea Priestley would quickly become one of my favorite women's wrestlers in the world, and was an absolute gift to see as a part of the early women's division. Priestley, of course, last year would part ways with AEW in a bit of a disappointing move for a desperate women's division that would soon see an upturn that I believe Bea would have been a great player in once lockdown would pass. Number 4, Ty Conti. While, like many others, did know of her from her time in NXT, I think I also found a category with many others where I wasn't quite sure of what talent she possessed due to both a lack of meat-catching NXT once Dynamite would debut and a lack of television exposure for Conti. With all that said, I was excited to see her come to AEW and very optimistic of what would come of this. Ty has now lived up to all the expectations I had of her then, and I can't wait to see more of her in AEW's future. Number 3, Allie, aka The Bunny. Someone who I feel is often grossly overlooked, Allie or the Bunny, whatever you want to call her, is absolutely great in ring and has something that few hold, and that is the ability to get across a message without ever saying a word with her movements and expressions. Outside of the ring, I commend Allie hardcore for her openness about her mental health struggles, something I believe can be truly helpful for those who look up to her and also have their own struggles out there. Number 2, the Queenslayer, Anna Jay. Someone who is relatively new to not only AEW, but wrestling as a whole, Anna Jay has done so much to impress in the little time she's had, and I'm just ecstatic for her eventual return from the injury she suffered while training for the women's tournament. I would also like to acknowledge how well AEW did with her story, having her join up with the Dark Order, something that was beneficial to both sides in big ways. Number 1, Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. Much like my previous list I've done, this number 1 was never in question. My favorite woman in AEW for the majority of its existence, Dr. Britt Baker, takes your spot right here at number 1. Originally gaining my attention through one of my favorite wrestlers, Adam Cole, as just being his girlfriend, Britt has become more than that, as she's even passed him up on my favorite wrestlers in general. Britt, of course, had the struggle to finally reach the top of AEW that I'd feel wrong not mentioning, as despite the injuries and seemingly every other force trying to hold her back, when she finally captured that world title, ending Cheetah's record reign, I celebrated harder than even when Kenny finally captured the AEW World Championship. That's saying something, as Kenny is my favorite wrestler in general, but despite how much both deserve these moments, Britt deserved hers just this much more for everything she did for the women's division since turning heel, through those aforementioned injuries and all, then on top of what she's continued to do now that she is champion.